meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Excited to start. Perfect. All right, hello everybody. This is your host, Vinyl Man Jeb of the Unlikely Places Pop and Rock radio podcast and radio show now. We had Jon Povey onto the Pretty Things, but now we got Wally Waller here with us. How are you, Wally?
I'm fine, thanks. Pleased to meet you and everybody.
And perfect. The first question I wanted to get into, so we get discussing of everything, but first off, what got you into music?
I guess I've always been, from when I can ever remember, I've liked music. But when I reached the senior school over here, you're aged about 11, you leave the primary education and go into your next stage, which is secondary education. And I noticed the first day in school, and this was a daily occurrence. I discovered that every day the headmaster would hold an assembly in the hall. He would rabbit on for such half an hour or so, and we sing hymns and do stuff, and
oh wow,
and it was when you're that age, I mean, just standing, they used to roll us up, line us up, form by form, going along to the back of the hall, so the oldest guys are at the back. But anyway, so we were right at the front, and when I you're shuffling from one foot to the other, trying to get comfortable. And when you're 11-year-old, just stand still for half an hour is a bit of a trauma to say. But I did notice that sitting on the stage, sitting on their chairs with their little illuminated music stands shining up into their angelic faces, I noticed the school orchestra, sat all the way through assembly. They just sat there and then scraped away for a few minutes while the hymn was being played. And I thought, well, now there's something to be. That's for me. I thought, I need to be in the school orchestra, and all this standing up crap can wait for another time. So that was one reason that made me, when they said, does anybody want to learn a musical instrument? Yes, my hand was straight up. So I learned to play the viola.
Very cool.
But I in primary school, I played, a recorder quite a lot. So I had a kind of basic knowledge of music, but then I heard things like, Little Richard and stuff, and I had to have a guitar, absolutely. And my old man, he bought me a guitar for my 13th Christmas, when I was 13. It was the most amazing thing for me. I just I forgot about all the music theory and just learned how to make music my way.
Yeah.
Which much more fun. But I had a kind of basic a basic idea about music theory and stuff from all the stuff that I guess it did come in handy, when in later times, figuring out harmonies and stuff, and I knew the basics about harmonies and stuff, and so I guess really there was a deep emotional kind of feel in me that I needed. I loved music. I wanted to be a musician. I think it was the coolest thing you could possibly be at that age. And there was nothing else. I mean, nowadays there's all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, it's too much.
Everybody's got computer games and stuff, and but when I was that age, that was the only game in town, And if you could, I never ever dreamt I would be a professional musician and make my living from it. But it's just such a world, another world opened up with, people like Little Richard, Everly Brothers, all that kind of era. It stimulated me a great deal, and I guess I entered I entered the 60s as a callow 15-year-old youth, and so I saw the whole thing unfold as as we began. As you know, I was in bands with Jon for, I guess, going back to maybe 61.
Oh, okay.
We were in a couple of small bands before we joined the Fenmen, which was kind of where we made a real mark.
Yeah.
But we were always in the same bands, and we you know, when we in the Fenmen, we started doing a lot of stuff with harmony, you know, callbacks and stuff with Bern Elliott and the Fenmen. But anyway, that's another story. We became a vocal harmony band because Bern Elliott was going to be a big star, and he didn't need he didn't need any grubby musicians around. So that was it. Well, nobody ever heard of Bern Elliott again, and I don't think Elvis lost too much sleep at night worrying about what he might be doing. But anyway, so it was a calling, basically.
Yeah.
But also, I saw the virtues of being a musician when I went to secondary school. I wouldn't have to stand up all through assembly every day.
There's the quote. I wanted to be a musician because I didn't want to stand up. That's perfect. Right. But you mentioned you got guitar as your first instrument, or viola was the first, and then you got guitar for your 13th Christmas there when you were 13. When did you start playing bass? As we know, you are the legendary bass player for the Pretty Things early on. So when did the bass playing start?
It started when Phil said to me, do you want to join the Pretty Things? And I said, well, yeah. He said, well, kind of the only slot available for me would be is the bass.
Gotcha.
The bass.
Yeah.
He wanted, at the same time, Jon and I were at that time we were in the Fenmen, and Phil was struggling with the third album, the third studio album, Emotions. And he asked me, because I was working with the Fenmen, and we actually lived opposite each other in the same street since we were kids, 4-year-old kids. And we were, real bosom buddies. But we weren't always home together. He was in the Pretty Things. Yeah. And so, but one day we were both home, we're not working anywhere. And he said, why don't you come over, see if we can write some songs? And so I took my old guitar, I still got that old guitar. And
very cool.
And it's and we in fact the first song we wrote was one that called The Sun, which was it was quite a it made quite a stir. And I just heard this morning that they want to use it in a movie that's being produced.
Really?
With it's quite it's an American movie called I think it's called the best the longest. No, wait a minute, I'll find it.
No
it's got people like Russell Crowe.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And it's quite it's quite a
very cool. Yeah.
I get the email. Yeah. So here we are. Yeah. It's called The Greatest Beer Run Ever.
Oh, cool. I'll have to see that then now.
Well, the basic storyline, so I'm given to understand, is that it's this guy leaves New York in 1967. This very year this song was written.
Yeah.
To find his buddies, because he somehow managed to duck out of going to Vietnam.
Oh,
but
wow.
His buddies were in Vietnam, and he wanted to take them some beer. So that's
interesting complex, interesting movie concept. That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, so it's got Bill Murray.
Oh wow.
Ethan, what's his name?
That sounds familiar. Is it Emery? Ethan
Anyway,
Emery, by any chance, or is it like I forget his last name? I know. Yeah.
I'm gonna bring up the
Getting the scoop
thing
here.
here. So yeah. Anyway, so you got to so that's hot news off the press this morning.
There you go. I got it. Look at that. Perfect. Well, I'll be tuning in just for the Pretty Things song, of course. I love. I just saw Licorice Pizza, so I was all over the '70s soundtrack that they threw into the movie, and it was just really good. And a lot of they heard Wings. They had Wings in there. They had Bowie in there, but they had some other bands, and I was like, oh man, I haven't listened to these in a while, so it got me doing the Licorice Pizza episode for the radio show. So I got a whole '70s playlist, so worked out good. But we'll get right into the meat and the bones.
But anyway, I digress. We after we'd written the song "The Sun" and a couple more in that one afternoon, Phil said to me, would you like to join the Pretty Things? He felt, he found someone he could work with, and I don't think he'd been getting a lot of help from the other guys in the band at the time. So I said, yeah, and he said, because he knew the Femme Men and he'd seen us play, and John was always quite a kind of dynamic, had a stage presence, and so he was the drummer in those days, and I was a kind of guitar player, what they used to call a rhythm guitar player in those days, which meant like a kind of second guitar.
Yeah, but, you're in the background just playing.
So anyway, so he said, you'd have to play the bass, but I mean, I know because John did play a bit of keyboards. In the Femme Men, in the Femme Men set, so he knew that there was a possibility. But that was a pretty wild step for him to take.
Yeah, for the drums to the keyboard.
Can you bring John in? Could he play keyboards? And can you play the bass? That's it. So it was a bit, it's a step in the dark, you have to say.
Yeah.
But I don't think we let him down.
No, I don't think so. I mean, history was made right there. I mean, those albums are, SF Sorrow and Parachute became these like known for psych rock, and then even earlier with Emotions as well. I mean, these albums became like, did you guys know like during like the creation of like SFR? I know I talked to John with it, and he said it was a little different than what you would expect. Did you guys know that it was going to be this big success later on, or did it kind of like with SF Sorrow, was it more of like trying to think of the word, but like was it as powerful like feeling when you were making it, this was the album that would be known in history as like the psych rock definite album?
We didn't know that. I mean, I didn't anyway. I liked it. I loved it. I had a lot to do with it. And we were getting into strange places musically that people hadn't really done before.
Yeah.
And you don't really know. And we didn't get a lot of support from EMI when it finally was launched. It was negligible, and it was a slow burn. It got great critical acclaim, but sales were very disappointing in the beginning, and that's, I think, EMI gave us no real support, and so it wasn't until maybe a couple of years later that people started talking about it in reverential tones, that which was that was quite and it started to become acknowledged as being something a bit special.
Yeah, and even like one of designated, some people say it's even the first concept rock album, and they always argue Tommy and the Who with that too, is with the two albums being like very up and near the front of the first ever concept rock albums. But you look at dates, SF Sorrow, it was right there, so it was one of the first really.
I mean, Pete got the idea.
Yeah.
I know because I know Arthur Brown. He was on Track Records at the time. Track Records was the huge label ran by the Who's manager at the time. I've forgotten his name, but Arthur said he played at the Christmas party. He just kept playing SF. So Pete Townsend kept playing over and over again, And because this was, the SF Sora was released, I think, 1st of December in '68.
Okay.
And that gave, and Tommy grew in his mind from there.
Yeah.
I haven't really studied Tommy much, but people tell me that the what's the story of an opera called the libretto. The libretto is is very similar to SF Sorrow.
Yeah, I know the like I always hear, because I play Death mixed in with She Says Good Morning when I cover you guys once in a while. I'll play those two songs together, and then I'll go right into Pinball Wizard, because you got the D up at the top of the fret, and they're all like around the same thing. So it's always like, it seems like, yeah, you definitely got inspirations from that without a doubt. But it was like, Peach and Townshend's always known for, like, negating things or being like, yeah, this is me, but like it was just his thing. But I love both the Pretty Things and the Who, so it was like, it was perfect to find a band that was sit my taste. And I always like finding things that not everybody likes, and the Pretty Things was like, I wanted to get more people into them. My dad was a big fan, so he got me into them, and then it was just
the ironic thing in it, Jeremy, was that from that, after a month, Pete got the idea from SSO to make Tommy. He made Tommy. It was released in America before SF Sorrow, because EMI was so slow, and so we got all the flack. We got the flack for being the plagiarists.
Oh, that sucks.
I mean, yeah.
That sucks big time. That's terrible, because it's like, you guys were first, and just because of the American sales date, it was like, oh no. Oh, jeez.
EMI was this enormous, behemoth of an organization, so they were slow, and they finally, finally they released it on Tamla Motown, which wasn't really the best move ever, but anyway, we got slagged off. We got slated for copying people. I've got reviews that I've saved in magazines saying that the Pretty Things, they're just copying Tommy,
and you're just like, but if they only knew, from like Arthur Brown's words, like, gee, if they only knew. Still fantastic album though.
But that hurt to be accused of ripping somebody else's stuff idea off.
Well, especially when you write it from the heart. I mean, you, Phil, and John were a big part of the writing too, and it's like, this comes from the heart. This isn't just something like, we all get inspired. I noticed that nowadays it's even more easy to copy chords from something else, because everything already exists, especially in rock. The same, you have to like really mess with different ways of layering and different things in the studio. But I'm a musician as myself. Like, I noticed that people are like, oh, that sounds like this or this, and I'm like, it also sounds like me, because I wrote the lyrics. I worked hard on just writing the lyrics. So it's like, lyric crafting is its own beast in itself. So it's definitely, and I love writing concept rock stuff, and it's definitely inspired by the Pretty Things, the Who, a little bit of the Stones when they would start doing a little stuff like that, and then of course the Beatles too. But it's just so much fun to hear these bands back in the day writing stories in music. It's just so cool, very unique.
I did have the feeling at the time that we were treading in the virgin snow. We were going places nobody had been, and so I didn't. Going back to your previous question, I didn't really know what to expect. Whether it was going to be a runaway success, or it's just going. But
and especially at that time, it easily could have been, because you look at Pink Floyd's history too. They changed drastically over time, and I saw that you guys got to play with David Gilmour on stage. That's really cool. I saw the video footage. And I'm sure Gilmour was just as excited playing with the Pretty Things as you guys were probably playing with David Gilmour. It's just a pretty cool thing. I hope so. But
I met David. In fact, John and I met David in 1964.
Oh wow!
That's a long time before he was anywhere near the Pink Floyd.
Yeah.
So he was. We were. Andrew Loog Oldham, the original Stones manager.
Yes. Yeah, that sounds familiar. Yep.
Andrew Loog Oldham used to record a lot of singles himself. He didn't only kind of do. So, well, not himself, but he used to produce things.
Got you. Yeah.
And so he used to use the Fenmen for vocal backers, but it didn't use us in music. But he used to hire us because we had the harmony thing pretty much
cool.
down. So we used to come in and we used to do some doo-wah, dee-wah, or whatever he wanted, oohs and ahs and stuff. And on one session we went to of his, the girl singer, I can't remember her name now. There was a young guitar player there. He was a session. All the musicians were session musicians. And lo and behold, it was David. And
cool.
he and the first time we worked with him in 19. Well, I'd been friendly with David for a long time, and Phil and him were very close buddies. So we used to kind of mix. But in 1998 we did SSR live, from top to bottom.
Yeah, I love that one with all the narration and everything too, which was awesome.
Yeah, at Abbey Road, and while we were rehearsing that, David said to me, "Do you remember that session?" And I'd forgotten it was him. And he said, "Do you remember that session we did for Andrew Luke Oldham in 1964?" I said, "Yes, I do." And he said, he'd remembered it.
That's awesome.
So that's nice, and he's a great guy. I like him a lot. There's no bullshit, but he's a superb technician of the guitar, apart from being an amazing,
he's just such a definitive sound too. Like nobody at that time, people had sounds that were similar, but Gilmour comes out and it was just like there's something different about Pink Floyd. And when he, later on joining Pink Floyd, it became this big thing. And and I love like Adam Hart Mother and all that kind of stuff too, like that earlier Pink Floyd. And I'm a big Syd Barrett fan, but I like how the band went their own direction. And I get it. I love all of Pink Floyd. So I've just definitely, when Dark Side of the Moon came out, man, it was just like, holy shit, with the quadraphonic kind of sounds and stuff like that. All of a sudden it was all new. But definitely David Gilmour I've been a big fan of his as well. So it was cool seeing you guys together, two artists that I love. And I was like, oh, this is awesome. It was really cool. Doing a song I love too. She Says Good Morning too, which was pretty awesome too. Right. I love that lick in that song so much. And actually my next question was to go into Parachute, because you guys have the new X Pretty Things release out, and I wanted to definitely cover that with you as well, because when I was talking to John, it wasn't out yet. Now it's out, so we'll have the other Pretty Thing come on and talk with us when it's out. But so what was the idea behind getting that all together and getting that to come out? I mean, Parachute's a phenomenal album, so it's great to hear that it's coming back.
We're talking about the original album now?
No, the new one. What was the ideas behind the remaking, the reimagining? Right.
Well, Snapper Music had re-released Parachute so many times, and I've been pressing for some time to do with not only Parachute but the other things. I remember when the SSO too. I wanted because I became Norman Smith, Norman Smith was our producer at EMI. Okay. He was our only kind of sane place. I mean, all the other kind of just bean counters, the rest of them. But he had soul. He was a musician. He was a great. I mean, he produced all the Beatles, not produced, but engineered all the Beatles records until and including Rubber Soul. All those he did everything. So he knew what he was doing, and he then EMI bumped him up from engineer into becoming a producer when he'd done things like the Pink Floyd and blah blah blah. And when we became involved with him, he was very highly respected so I think we got a lot of leeway because we spent a lot of time in Abbey Road, which wasn't cheap, and in our contract, the company had to pick up all those recording costs. So the bean counters weren't very happy. But Norman Smith, he was because he had that track record that brought a lot of money to the company. They just let him. They didn't, they wouldn't tread on us too much. So anyway, so it hadn't sold that well. They hadn't supported it. SFSORA that was, but so then eventually they, after a little while, they weren't, they weren't in any big hurry to rush us back into the studio, and Phil and I, we weren't actually doing a lot. Phil and I had been working on material, and we just done a collaboration with Philippe Debarge, which we wrote all the songs for, and so the song cupboard was a bit bare. So, and then we got a phone call just almost the minute we finished the Debarge thing. We got a phone call from Norman, and he said, "Look, can you come in? I booked some studio time for the next album." And Phil and I looked at each other and we thought, well, that's interesting. We didn't have an idea, any idea where we were going, what we were going to do, anything. And so it evolved. It became something. Well, I think we had about 2 weeks to get some songs down.
Oh, wow.
Get an idea of what the album was. What's it going to be? What's it going? So. I said, we looked at each other and we thought, you got anything? I had a few bits and pieces that we, and he said, well, I got this, and I've been writing this short story. He said, it's about this guy who keeps a scrapbook. He lives like a hermit in a big city in his little room, but he keeps scrapbooks of all the rich and famous people, and they kind of, that's his whole life. He doesn't doesn't relate to anything else. So he said, I was, it's because he's always cutting, squares and things and oblongs out of the paper and sticking them in his book. He said, I think I'm going to call him the good Mr. Square. And I said, oh, yeah. And straight away, I had an idea. I got my guitar and we sat down. And literally in about 10, 15 minutes, we had kind of the bones of the song, almost all of it. And that kicked us off. We still didn't know quite where we were going, but we kept bringing things to each other and playing stuff. And it seemed obvious that, this is 1969. This is the end of the 60s, just coming right at you. Yep. It didn't seem like a big deal at the time. It's much bigger, but now, when people, think it's, the 60s being, it wasn't. The 60s to us wasn't at the time. Wasn't a real big deal, but it is now when you look back and in retrospect, you can see, everybody's got 20/20 vision in hindsight. So we. We finally, the things we were doing, there was kind of an exodus from London at the time. People were running to the country and getting places in the country because there was a kind of burnout in people who've been in the city, and the people were kind of, well, anecdotally at least, they wanted to go to the countryside. So, and the songs that we were writing, either about the town or the country, and so we saw. So basically, I mean, we saw this. The first side of Parachute is basically based around city life.
Okay.
And the other side is basically, starts with grass. And it goes.
That's why there's a hustle and bustle in the beginning. And then there's kind of a relaxed. Okay, that makes sense. I felt that.
The hustle and bustle is basically like the hubbub of a city.
Yeah.
It's basically a musical version of the city coming to life, and
very cool.
Traffic starts going and going, and that's and then Phil said to me one day, "Why don't we call it Parachute?" I said, "What? Run that past me again." He says, "Yeah, listen." He says, we're, people want to run to the country to escape. People want to come to the city the other way. They want to escape something else. But he said it's like, if you're in an aircraft and the engines fail. You what do you do?
Yeah.
We got to, we got to, with a parachute you got a chance. It's not sure. It's not an absolute solution. You don't know you're going to hit the ground in one piece.
No, you just hope. You're hoping.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he said, like people running to the country now, they don't know whether it's right or wrong. They don't. Are they selling up everything in the town?
Mm-hmm.
I said, well, okay, we'll go for that then. And that's how it became called Parachute.
Very cool. I like that. And then how did the X Pretty Things come about with doing a revisited version of it, which is the newest release?
Well, no, I just remembered I started talking about that.
No worries.
Yeah, because I'd been Norman Smith's protege really, because I used to get involved with the production and stuff, and at the end of that EMI contract, I actually started working for EMI as a producer. Norman asked me to come in to work for, so I spent 5 years doing that.
Very cool.
But and so I've written with Phil the whole of Parachute, and I am a producer. I am the kind of protege of the guy who actually produced Parachute, and I thought that I should be allowed to do some remixing.
Yeah.
No, they won't. I've been trying to press this for a long time.
Oh, wow.
I think it was obvious. It was obvious to me that I should do this. I felt very capable of doing it. Nobody else wanted to touch it. They think it's sacrilege to do. And what's you worried about? Nobody's destroying anything. The original's
already out. We were just trying to get. People are going to visit the original because of the reissue. They're going to go back and explore the original too.
but all at the time, all I was asking to do was to remix some of the original songs from Parachute, to actually remix, maybe add a few bits and pieces, change it, because Snapper had re-released the album so many times with exactly the same audio, exactly the same bonus tracks, exactly the same, and they just keep giving people aren't stupid.
They know.
They don't want to keep.
Yeah.
I mean, they can't keep uploading. Yeah. You can't keep chucking the same stuff. But anyway, so I pressed for a long time to do something, to do some different audio, which I'm very capable of, and I'm very qualified for. Having my history is, I mean, it's a. It will be. It's a sales kind of. It's an obvious thing, and people would be glad to hear something that is authentic enough, given who I am and what I've done.
Yeah.
So, but no, the management and the record companies. So, in 2000, I was really pressing for this in 2010, which was the the 40th anniversary of Parachute. And the answer was no. So I thought, you know what? I'm just going to do it myself all over again. So I got, I spoke to John. He's up for it. Skip, he was up for it. But no, I didn't. I was worried about about the guitar slot. I didn't really think Phil was going to be able to contribute to it. The politics of the management. Well, I think it would have been difficult for him. He did write some extra lyrics for us. He sent an email, because when we did everything in Malaga in southern Spain, and when we got there, John actually emailed him again and said, "Why did you come down and join us?" And he said, "Well, I really can't, but I'm with you in spirit. I love you guys. You're all part of my life." So, so it wasn't to be. It was just the four of us, but we still haven't got. I thought, I don't think Vic Units played anything anywhere for years, and Dick wasn't on the original Parachute, and it probably wasn't his
Mhm.
his bag. Dick's a fantastic guitar player, but I don't know how it would have sounded. But anyway, he was stuck. He was in the same place as Phil,
Gotcha.
where the management were concerned. So, and out of the blue, John and I, John lives in Spain, but he comes over now and again. And I used to live in Sussex. He came, and we used to play a bit of music and do stuff, and we had a few kind of projects kind of loosely going on. But the phone rang. I've been talking to John about this. The phone rang, and I don't know where this came from. It's complete bolt out of the blue. I hadn't spoken to him for maybe 20 years. It's Pete Tolson
Oh, jeez.
on the phone.
Answering your call for a guitarist right there, the original, the one that was on the album.
It's a sign from above. I thought.
Yeah.
You see, I'm getting the nod. The man upstairs is giving me the big nod here. So that was it. So that was it. We spoke to him. John and I spoke to him, and he was up for it. He said, I haven't played for years, but I want to get back. I want to do some music. We went to a couple of rehearsal rooms and kicked it. He was as brilliant as he ever was. I mean, when you can ride a bike, you can ride a bike.
Mm-hmm.
So we felt very confident, and on that basis, John had a friend in Malaga who had a studio, and he agreed that we could use that to record, and he became a good friend, a guy called John Woody.
Okay.
And he helped us a lot. And we formed and I thought we did a good job. I thought the special, it was released in 2012. I wasn't really too. I was just really learning how to get around Pro Tools at the time, because I did all my previous work had been on analog stuff. So, but anyway, by the time the 50th anniversary came around a couple of years back, we're thinking about doing another. So I thought, well, I'll remix it, and
Perfect.
I managed. I'm pretty sure I managed to improve quite a lot on what I'd done, 10 years before, because I had a lot more experience now. And so I think, and also we found a song. There was one song that we didn't quite finish from Malaga, which was a song from Pete Tolson called "When the Dark Moon Leaves," and so this is an extra track that wasn't recorded before.
Oh wow!
And I think it was. I think generally this is a far superior version of the re-recording Parachute. I thought we took it into some. We tried to reimagine it. I didn't want people to play the original album at all while we were recording it. Just the songs.
Just to kind of the lyrics and just reworking with it. Yeah.
Just start from scratch. Let's get some more ideas. Who's got ideas? What are we doing? Change the arrangements, add to stuff, and
very cool.
So that's how it was, and I think we, it was a worry. We were competing with an amazing album, the original. Parachute, and people will inevitably judge it alongside that. But and I think, we took it to different places. Where I think there are parts of the original Parachute I think are better. There are parts of the re-released version I think are better. We had a lot of ideas which which I mean, some of it will be reassuringly comforting for
Awesome.
people who know parachute. But but sometimes you want to challenge them too. It's not easy when you've listened to something for 50 years and suddenly somebody's doing it differently. There's a bit of resistance
But
there
at
in the
least it's the
beginning.
guys who made it originally doing it somewhat differently than somebody just covering the whole album and then changing it. It's you guys have the rights to do that, which is awesome. You have the rights to mess with that, which I think is definitely a
Yeah,
cool challenge. But it's right. There's times I listen to Beatles recordings that I grew up with. I mean, I'm 22, so I didn't grow up, with the Beatles. My dad did. He's in his
yeah,
he's 66, so he would we'd listen to sometimes the new, like, the Japanese mixes of the Beatles and go, oh, that's not what I'm used to. We're so used to the panned this way, or you get such a
yeah,
feel with just the instruments themselves. And it's just like
yeah,
it's definitely a feeling. There's times I've, like, the Monkees just recently redid like a 50th anniversary thing where they were redoing, like, stereo versions of the songs, and I don't get the same feel from the original mono takes of those songs. There's just like the excitement. It's not, the songs sound great. It's great to hear them in stereo and, like, full-fledged different, but that's not how I remember the Monkees growing up as a younger kid, getting into them way later. So we just recently did a Monkey special on the radio show, so it was kind of fun.
yeah.
People were asking why didn't we pick up the newer ones, and it was like, that's just not the feel. The feeling's there in those mono releases from back in the day, but it's
It
still
is.
cool to hear.
It's a challenge. People
Yeah.
don't people don't realize that they just want to hear the same thing.
Hmm.
If they hear something that's kind of deviates, goes off on a tangent, well, that's wrong. That
Yeah.
it's a natural thing. I've
Hmm.
experienced it myself. But anyway, there was absolutely no point in going into the studio and trying to make a carbon copy of what we
No,
did
it's already
50
been,
years.
they already re-released it a million times. There's no point.
Yeah, no. So we had to push the boundaries and find
Mm.
different places to go. So anyway, I'm very happy with the result that we finished.
Well, I'm excited to hear it. I'm gonna be ordering mine soon, hopefully soon. I got my tax refund from my company and stuff, so we're just doing all this. Then once that's all over with, I'll be definitely grabbing the album, play it on the radio show or something too. So that'd be perfect.
Right. There's a couple of on the CD version,
Hmm.
which which is now just becoming available. There's some
Ooh.
extra um, actually some of the original demos
Ooh.
that Phil and I home demos that Phil and I made in 1969 for
Oh wow.
Parachute, the original Parachute.
Oh, I'm
And there's
excited for that.
also there's a track there with that I played. I did the first thing I ever did with Pete Tolson in the flat, just a home demo. But you can hear
It's
the
so
talent.
cool. I'll definitely be picking up the
Uh,
CD. I'll probably get both versions, but I'm definitely gonna get the CD one first so I can play it on the radio show too. Stick the tracks in and then be able to put them in the playlist. So that'd be perfect. But definitely, I'm excited. I'm excited to hear it. I was excited about the announcement when I was talking with John, because again, just being a Pretty Things fan a lot later on, because I'm 22, so a lot later on. But my dad listened to Crosstalk a lot, but he also was way back. He had the first album, the very first one with the blues and all the original Pretty Things album, and then
right.
he didn't realize, like, SFR, because he goes, if I found out about this back then, I'd be all over this album, be up in everywhere. But he goes, I didn't learn about it till way later, going back. So I've heard that from a lot of people that were like, they discovered it way later, and that's where I'm like, that's why it's now becoming that definitive. I've heard it on many lists. The definitive Psych album is SF Sorrow, and then Parachute is definitely a 70s sounding era album, which is why I might throw a song if I could, time wise. We have Joey Mullen coming on the show today, as I mentioned to you this afternoon, which I'm very excited for.
Right.
Badfinger is one of my all-time. I'm in a Badfinger, starting to form a Badfinger cover band, but I'm going to throw a few Pretty Things songs in there too, because that whole era is just my favorite era of music. Being that I'm young, but I still love that stuff. Mine is to turn back and listen to that stuff. But we're definitely doing a 70s themed show. Licorice Pizza movie soundtrack's got a lot of 70s stuff, so that's thrown in there. But I'll probably throw one of the. I was gonna do Sickle Clowns, but it's like 6 minutes. I'm like, I can't throw that one in there. But definitely throw something in there from Parachute, which would be awesome. I had Photomaker on last
Right.
episode, so I love all that 70s stuff. So But thank you for coming on, Wally. It was an honor to have you, and you're more than welcome to come on again
Well,
when you got any plans for the future, any stuff going forward.
it's quite, yeah, I won't, dot the I's and cross the
Mhm.
T's at this moment. But yeah, I'm active musically, and there'd be quite a lot more to
Perfect.
come.
Well, then definitely our show is ready to promote you if you need any help with anything and getting you on the.
Well,
Let us know.
well, yeah, that's nice, Jeremy. Thanks for
Yeah,
having me on,
no
and
problem. Thank you.
I hope you get a nice show out
Yeah.
of all my inane ramblings.
Yeah, I'll definitely we'll get this all edited up and get everything. Hopefully the video, this will be the first ever video. I haven't done video ever on the podcast. This will be interesting to have the video up with the audio. Maybe
Yeah.
people are gonna be like, now this is the format you have to stick to, and I'll be like, oh great. But I do enjoy it, so it's perfect.
Yeah. Well, that's great, Jeremy. Let me know
Yeah,
how you get on with the
we'll
videos.
do. And thank you so much. And I'll send you some of my music too. Maybe you'll get a taste of listening to some of the stuff. I've sent John a couple tracks. I worked with Terry Draper of Clat 2 on a song, so I'll send that your way as well. I've been
Okay.
getting around. Well, thanks, Wally.
Okay. Well, yeah. Say thank